What's up, government seekers? How you doing? My name is Graham Elwood. You are watching Government Secrets. This is our news time, everybody. So lock this down. It will be Thursdays at 11 a.m. Pacific, 2 o'clock Eastern time, or whatever time zone you are in. And of course, if you're like, it's a little early in the morning, well, then I would get a delicious Government Secrets mug and have whatever you have in the morning. I'm drinking. This is a fruit flavored black tea. That's what I'm having this morning. And truth. Hot cup of truth, everybody. Like, share, subscribe. Share this out on your social media right now. That always helps our numbers. If you're listening, of course. Positive reviews, all that stuff helps. And thank you to everybody watching on the CIA Tube and, of course, Facebook. Thank you so much for collecting our data over at Facebook and everybody at rockfin.com. Hit the like button. Let's see what we got over that. We got our moderators. Holly and Backyard Politics are here. So don't say something stupid. They'll block you. And let me just make sure we got everything dialed in here. We got an action-packed episode. We got a rock solid. We got some fun stuff to talk about. Oh, somebody watching or listening to today's episode is going to be like, what, really? Yep. The Tooth Fairy was actually a recruiter for Epstein. That's what we're going to learn today, folks. It's really fun stuff. I'm due for a haircut. This is getting a little poofy, but we're gonna endure. That's what we're gonna do with today. We're gonna endure. All right,
ladies and gentlemen, it's time for Government Secrets episode 95 with the two most censored comedians in the world, Lee Camp and Graham Elwood.
What's up, buddy?
Hey, man, Thursday. This is gonna change everything.
This is
when it all happens. Because I think, I was getting very nervous that we had a few too many people watching. And so I think it's important to change the schedule. As whenever you get up to a certain number, you gotta throw a new hurdle in the way of folks who are watching or listening. We're also going to change the name of this thing in a couple of weeks. So.
Yeah, that's the good plan. We should totally change the name and the theme of it. And now that we've changed the time for the third time, we should really we should make it as hard for people to follow us as possible. So
exactly. Yeah. We got a new kind of encrypted video. You have to download some software.
It's actually... it's one of those where you have to watch it through one of those red things. Like when you were a kid, there was some like hidden message or whatever. You just so it'll just see like all these weird colors, and then you hold it up, and then the show will appear.
It's actually a decoder ring we'll send everybody, and then you take all of our words and you turn a little knob on the ring for each letter, and then you can decipher what we're saying.
I think that's fantastically. I think this strategy of ensuring we never have too big of a following. That's the
well, and really we're working with big tech on this. They've done their best to delete or demonetize our channels, never show them to anybody. And then we try and just help them just a little bit.
Right. Were you guys starting to just go up every Friday morning? I know I got Government Secrets. No, you don't. Now it'll be Thursday. It'll be Thursday.
You can still listen on Friday mornings, but it's going to be so old. It's going to be those Government Secrets. They're going to be rotten. They're going to be stinking.
Yeah, they're all freshly harvested Government Secrets. Folks, if you are listening or watching this, give us a 5-star review. If it's on iTunes, positive reviews help, and share this to as many people as you know, so that your friend and family circle really know that they're going to think you're a conspiracy theorist and and tell them, no, these aren't conspiracies. They're actual things. They're Freedom of Information Act documents. And share this out because it's up to you to thwart Lee and I's plan of not having a big following. So it's really...
Well, by the way, folks, we might as well throw it out there up top. We have a show in London. Tickets already available October 12th, and tickets coming soon for Berlin October 5th.
Yes. Should be getting a ticket link from Berlin very soon. So George Galloway is going to be at the show in London. I guess Eleanor has to do the Berlin show.
Yeah, she's going to switch to the Berlin show. So Eleanor Goldfield opening the Berlin show and George Galloway opening the London show.
So get your tickets at either of our websites, leecamp.net or grahamelwood.com. The tickets are for London are already going. There's some VIP tickets up front. Those are almost out. And then there's regular tickets as well. So it's this cool comedy club. I've never performed at it, Backyard Comedy Club in London, but I
think for all the VIPs, we should give them their own personal little clip that they could put it on, personal shoulder pocket. They could just clip it right onto their shoulder. Government secrets, shoulder pocket, and they can keep their secrets in there.
Yeah. This is where I keep all my government secrets, right in this little pocket. And the pocket just says pew pew across the front. Hashtag pew pew. It's a little, I knew this. I was like, I haven't worn little pocket in a while. It's time for
little pocket. Is that the native name? If it worn little pocket.
It's time for little pocket. I'm going to see if I'll try to see if I can bring little pocket to London.
So I don't know if they let that through TSA.
This is a customs issue. This is definitely, well, the pocket needs its own visa. So
like, what's the little pocket for, sir? Sir, what is in the little pocket?
It's just CIA coups. That's what I have in here. That's all I have in my little pocket is the name of CIA operations.
It's enough to fit upwards of 5 Tic Tacs. So it is a very useful pocket.
Upwards. I think 5 that's really pushing. I mean, if you go 5, it's really going to stick out.
4.5. You gotta whittle one down. Yeah.
Yes. All of you out there whittling Tic Tacs. This is I know there's a big Tic Tac whittling community out there. And so we welcome you to the show. And this
for those of you listening to the podcast and you've never seen one of Graham's shoulder pockets, you're missing out.
It's only this shirt. I don't have these little pockets on a bunch of shirts.
No, it is not just that shirt. There's at least one other.
No, Lee.
Really? Hold on. You had a fucking shoulder pocket on your jacket the one time I saw you in the past 3 years. You collect shoulder pockets.
Okay. Well, a jacket and a shirt are two different things, Lee. You collect shoulder pockets. I'm going to Shoulder Pocket Con next week. It's in Omaha. It's amazing. It's the best shoulder pocket convention.
The fact that you would deny your shoulder pocket obsession is really offensive.
I love, like, that's your summation of me. It's just like he talks about Epstein too much and he loves shoulder pockets. Like, that's how you sum me up. It's just
that's the Tinder profile.
Talks about Epstein too much, loves shoulder pockets. Swipe right, ladies. Here it comes.
If you're into storing tiny things near your shoulder or collarbones, then he is the guy for you.
I'm sure you have some little things you want stored near your shoulder. I'm going to buy you a shirt with a shoulder pocket on it, Lee.
I don't know where one gets those.
And nobody knows your real birthday because you put fake ones out on the internet. So I don't know what it is. I'm going to pick one of your fake birthdays and send it to you for that.
Oh, all right. I got to tell you this. This is the last thing before we start the show, because I know the intros can get exaggerated. But speaking of my fake birthdays, have you ever seen, I don't know if this is, you might not have a Google alert for your name like I do. This is the only reason I find out about these things. But there are a few sites that claim to collect information on celebrities. And apparently they dig pretty deep to call me a celebrity. But information on celebrities. So people can go there and learn the truth about their celebrities. And it has like net worth and stuff. Oh. And the latest one said that I'm a devout Christian and but I'm also into all of the gods and goddesses, whatever the fuck that means. I make $100,000 a month.
Oh my God.
And my favorite part was Lee is really into shoe shopping and has upwards of 100 pairs of formal shoes. I have one pair of shoes that I've worn for the past 3 years. One pair of black boots. Like
That's I love the you believe in all gods and goddesses. That actually tracks just based what I know on you. Like I know you guys had some sort of druid ceremony, and then
but that's because I disbelieve in all gods and goddesses.
So you're just gonna
the bot picking up the information missed half the word.
I looked up one and it said Graham Elwood's net worth is like $10 million. I was like, where is this money?
Yeah.
Where tell me where this
amazing. Amazing. I can't wait when that check arrives.
Please. Is it in an offshore account? Is it like, do I have it on a Bitcoin heart cold wallet that I'm not aware of? Like, where is this 10 million, man? I need it. I could use it. I
had a guy once post on Facebook, Lee Camp, look out your window tomorrow morning. There will be a burning cross. And a burning cross on your lawn. And I reposted it on my page and said, folks, I'm very excited about this. Come tomorrow morning. I will have a lawn.
Yeah, I remember some guy was like, I'm going to find all your information, man. I'm going to find out who your girlfriend is. I'm going to hassle your girlfriend. And I had like just gone through this breakup where I had to get a restraining order. And I was like, go find her, man. Let her
hassle away.
I tell her. Yeah. Oh man. I was like, oh, don't bug her. You better not find her. Oh man.
Well, for today's show, we're going through two well-known celebrities. One of them was destroyed by the government. One of them was working for the government.
Yes. This today, I mean, this is our 70s celebrity episode.
70s celebrity episode.
Well, do we go? One of them is near and dear to both of our hearts.
Yep.
And the other one is going to really make you question a lot of your beliefs. So, you want me to go first?
Yeah, well, we should end upbeat on the death of a beloved comedian. So let's go with yours first.
Let's end the show on a guy telling the truth that they murdered. Yeah, that's two comedians who are censored already and apparently have front lawns and $10 million. Let's do that. All right, kids. So.
Welcome to Government Secrets episode 95, segment number 1.
Folks, this one, I've heard little musings about this, but I decided to dig deep on this a little further. So most of you, maybe if you have not, Gloria Steinem was one of the key figures in the women's liberation movement in the 60s and 70s. So it was called Women's Lib back then, but she's, one of the, I don't know what you'd call her, founders or of modern feminism. She really helped. She was in the forefront of that.
One of the faces, and continues to this day. Just a few years ago, had a best-selling book.
Yes. So had a best-selling book, and she's looked at as like, that's for young women that are into equality and feminism. She's the one to look up to. Well, kids, turns out she worked for the CIA. So and so what came out in her book, her book came out I think in 2015. It was called My Life on the Road, and it recounts her life's journeys and travels. And I'm going off of an article that was in USC's journal, like the college's, like, what's this website called? Center on Public Diplomacy, right? The USC Center on Public Diplomacy did this, and a bunch of outlets did articles on this because it was mentioned in the book, but very briefly and very sort of like covered up. And why I wanted to talk about it as well is last week we talked about Operation Chaos, and I'm gonna show you how in Operation Chaos, remember, it the other operations underneath Operation Chaos was the infiltration of a lot of lefty movements, and feminism was no different. So she worked for the CIA. This is a fact. And
she's you might get to this. She's admitted it.
Yeah. She's admitted it. So this isn't some like thing, but what's critical in her admission is this quote. Her relationship to the agency in the 1950s and 60s, after a magazine revealed her employment by a CIA front organization, the Independent Research Service. So she was working for the CIA in the 50s and 60s before the women's lib movement was like a thing. It really started to take hold in the late 60s, early 70s. And this might have to be a whole separate episode, but I'm uncovering some stuff, and I didn't have the time to do all the research today. So of like how the Rockefeller Foundation really they took the feminist movement and fueled it because it was a way to get women in the workplace, to get more tax dollars from them, and to get kids to go to Rockefeller sponsored schools so they could really have more influence over the children. So it's good stuff.
Well, yeah, that would be a whole interesting other episode, but that fits in with like we've talked about witches before. The whole idea of a witch was really to stop independent women who had information about the community. They could educate the children in a different way of, than indoctrination and schooling. And even beyond the whole witch thing, more recently, you have just, 100 years ago, a woman who wasn't married was considered something's wrong with them at a certain age, 30, 40, whatever. Something's wrong with them. They're an old spinster. They're you should steer clear of them. So this all fits with that.
Yeah, but it's also too, if you have in the traditional setting where the dad works and the mom stays home with the kids, then the child is being, in theory, in general, is being raised by the parents. So to get the mom out of the workplace or out of the home into the workplace, and then the kid can be raised more by like influence by the state, then we can have more influence over the kid. But also it's like most things, it starts as a noble thing, like equality. Women didn't have the right to vote. Women didn't have equal protections on many of the laws. So it's like, oh, we got to fix that. Okay, great. Let's fix that. Just like Jim Crow laws were wrong. But then the CIA goes, hey, let's take this thing and turn it evil. But the quote, this is the quote that is really very suspect for me personally, is Steinem, this is a quote, defended the CIA relationship, saying, quote, "In my experience, the agency was completely different from its image. It was liberal, nonviolent, and honorable." Lee, those three words describe this show.
Everything we've learned, yeah.
We've learned nothing from 94 episodes of this series. It's that the CIA is liberal, nonviolent, and they are absolutely honorable. Like
I mean, some of the stuff's a little sketchy, but all of it's been nonviolent.
Yeah. Look, assassinating democratically elected leaders because they had socialist views that weren't in line with American corporate policies. If that's not honorable, I don't know what is. I mean, I don't know what's and
that quote was at least the 70s, if not the 80s, when she said that. Like this is long after so much had come out about the CIA.
Yeah, I mean, this is like, and this shows you how effective, and we've talked about this on so many levels on this show. We've talked about the CIA infiltration of mainstream media. We've done episodes on how they've infiltrated Hollywood. And this is in line with that message of, hey, look, the CIA does a little stuff, that's, in the gray area, but ultimately they're the good guys, right? They're always depicted as the good guys. There's very few movies that show them as the bad guys. The one that always pops to mind that I always bring up is 3 Days of the Condor, which came out in the 70s, starring Robert Redford.
That was about the time that they realized they needed more control of Hollywood.
Yeah. Yeah. And they were like, oh, and that was that was in the 70s. And there's a great book to read called Easy Riders, Raging Bulls. And that was the studio system had kind of collapsed in the late 60s, and independent artists were allowed to run Hollywood. And that's when you had all these anti-war movies like The Deer Hunter, Apocalypse Now, you had 3 Days of the Condor, you had Easy Rider, you had all these movies that were like counterculture movies. And that's when the CIA and the corporate state in the 80s went, we're buying up all the studios and turning everything. That's when we went from like these amazing movies to just the blockbuster, Rocky 5, whatever.
Yeah. Yeah. And they found ways to at least have some influence on the movies so that even if there were movies coming out that they didn't love, they wouldn't be as bad as.
Right. And it's just that slight shifting of the narrative, of just planting the seeds. And we know this through, we talked about last week, MK Ultra. We've done several episodes on MK Ultra. They have studied very thoroughly human psyche, human behavior, and how to influence. I mean, so they know it's like the defense attorney that just tries to plant the seed of, maybe the guy wasn't there just enough to go, he probably is innocent, because for a murder case, you need shadow of a doubt. So they're always just kind of planting these little and hey, if feminist icon Gloria Steinem says, oh, the CIA's misunderstood, she's nice, she's a woman, she's a strong woman, but she's fought for us, so I trust her. See how effective that is to go, oh, it's like that. Remember that CIA a couple years ago put out that new video of like inclusion and diversity and showing it's like this horrific recruiting video to young like Gen Z people to be like, you want to be part of a diverse team of inclusion, wokeness with the CIA. Like it was like, so, and this is also what this article points out is how the CIA is looked at as like, guys in crew cuts with, skinny ties and things in their ear. And this is how they're like, no, we need a softer face of this. I just saw a YouTube show, this guy, Les Friedman podcast. I watch him on occasion. He talks usually about crypto, and he had this CIA guy on who was like long hair, headband, beard, cool shirt, t-shirt. Like he looked like he literally just got back from Burning Man. And I'm like, of course they want this guy on a YouTube show.
Yeah.
To show that the CIA's cool hipster, and he's talking about data collection, and, the CIA is not allowed to survey its own citizens. And I'm just like, wow, is this bullshit? Like,
yeah, well, and you might have talked about it on the show. I talked about them, the new CIA, essentially ads they've made that promote how they have like a gay guy working at the CIA, and they have a Hispanic woman who's so proud of her work at the CIA. And
yeah. I like, they're telling these like immigrant stories. Like my parents came here from Ecuador and now I work in the CIA. Like, oh, wow. You're so proud. And it's like when they put, I'm blanking on her name, when Trump appointed the first female head of the CIA. And everyone was like, yay, diversity, inclusion. And she was
Gina Haspel.
Gina Haspel, and she was pro-torture. She would fly.
She'd overseen the torture in one of the black sites.
Yeah, she would fly to CIA black sites to watch it. Like John Kiriakou put an op-ed piece, and I believe in the New York Times, saying she's the worst choice. Get a woman in there. I'm all for it, crushing the old boys network, but she's horrible. Anyone but her.
Yeah.
So,
Graham, I don't know if this fucks up the flow. We could play a 3-minute clip of Gloria Steinem talking about her time in the CIA.
Oh, you have this?
Yeah, it's on YouTube.
Yes, let's do this right now.
And can I share it, or do you have to share it?
If you can't share,
it looks like I can. Can you put that up?
Yeah. All right, folks. Here we go.
Independent Research Service.
That's right.
Well, exactly when did your own association with the CIA start, and in what fashion? Did they come to you, or did you go to them?
In 1958, when I came home from India, I discussed with student leaders, past and present, many
Hold on a
of
sec.
them
Lee, turn your mic off.
Association, this kind of small foundation to encourage Americans to go. They thought it was a good idea too. I was then told by foundations and professors and friends that I should not do this, that I would get in trouble with the House Un-American Activities Committee, the American Legion, all of those 50s people. And I became convinced that it was impossible. It was at that point that the student leaders said to me that they had in the past received funds for international programs from the CIA, and that they felt that this was important and could also be partly funded by the CIA.
Well, I mean, did you feel that you really tried? I mean, did you go around to all of the wealthy private foundations, wealthy private people, and explain your point of view and explain why you felt it was important that the United States be represented at these things in a certain way? What did they tell you?
They told me that, well, the Ford Foundation, for instance, told me that they thought we were too liberal and too controversial, and that we would endanger their cultural programs in Austria. And the first festival was being held in Vienna. It was not encouraging at all. And the private individuals to whom I went often had particular points of view to put forward, which would have been much, much more restricting than the CIA funds were, which were free. I mean, no one was told what to say.
What do you mean they were free? You mean to say it was easier for you to work for the CIA than a private organization?
That's right. And the reason I think that comes as a surprise, as it did to me at the time. I mean, I had the conventional liberals' view of the CIA as a right-wing incendiary group, and I was amazed to discover that this was far from the case, that they were enlightened, liberal, nonpartisan activists of the sort who characterized the Kennedy administration, for instance.
You have not been working now for the CIA since 1962.
Mm-hmm.
You still criticize. You were down recently in Washington?
Yes, when the story broke that I had that I had for 4 years been a Central Intelligence agent, I was demonstrating outside the Pentagon underneath Mr. McNamara's office against bombing in Vietnam. And this didn't precisely fit with the image of a CIA agent, but then neither does the CIA.
Wow.
I love the idea that because she showed up at a protest outside the Pentagon, that must mean that the CIA is fine. Or maybe they thought, hey, it's quite beneficial for us to have Gloria Steinem, who's a CIA agent, pretend to be part of this protest so that people buy in to whatever she's pushing.
Oh, God. Like, unbelievable. They're quite honorable. They're nonpartisan. They're nonviolent. Like, wow. I would love to interview her today and be like, here's the list of all the coups, all the assassinations, all the people's lives they've ruined and destroyed. Do you still think they're, quote, nonviolent and honorable?
And also, I love how she tries to minimize. She's like, when the story broke that I had once for 4 years been a CIA agent, like it's not like you went to a dentist appointment. That's a fucking commitment.
I know. She's so supposed to minimize it. She makes it sound like, okay, one time there was a CIA barbecue and I just happened to go there. And then I was on their payroll for 4 years, but it was just one barbecue. Like, yeah, you were a CIA agent for 4 years and you were probably told, yeah, go to this Pentagon rally. And it's weird that you join the CIA and then suddenly you become elevated in this women's movement. That's so weird that the CIA would that would happen. What a wacky coincidence.
I know. And the other thing is she although she's like rolling her eyes, uses the word agent instead of like a CIA informant, which is still, we could be trashing her for that as well. But an informant is something lesser where they're telling everything that's going on inside a movement. So it's still fucked. And we could be railing against her for being a CIA informant. But an agent is the next level where you are working for the CIA more than just informing.
They're a bunch of liberal do-good, like, and then listen to the framing of that. Again, they're so effective at just changing the framing, the narrative just a little bit. So the Ford Foundation said we were a bunch of liberal radicals, but the CIA was open to it. And this is under the and to put some historical context for our audience. So this is the height of the Cold War, right? So a lot of Americans, even some lefty activists, were like, yeah, but the Soviet Union's bad. You know, there were some like full-on lefties that were like, we're communist, we're against capitalism, but there's still that, like, Americans have been, especially back in the 50s and 60s and 70s, were so propagandized as to the big, bad, evil Soviet Union. So one of the things the CIA did, and I want to talk about this, this is part of, this happened in 1958, but this is relevant to how Steinem fits into this narrative that they were doing. So there is this World Youth Festival in 1957 that was in Moscow, which was sponsored by left-wing student organizations. And part of what it was doing, and this is where Steinem fits in, is America, you're free to have the choice, right? That was our selling point. That was our marketing for American exceptionalism. The Soviet Union tells you what to do, what job to have. So, hey, it was marketed as, you know, Soviet women don't even have the same rights. That's America. You can protest and get women's rights and change laws. They can't do that in the Soviet Union. So they had all of these like youth movement showing Russians, you know, young Russian kids, while this youth movement was spreading all throughout the world in the 50s and 60s, rock and roll, Beatles, all that stuff. They were doing these movements, and they had one in Moscow in 1957 that the CIA infiltrated the entire festival, right? And that goes back to what we talked about last week on Operation Chaos. So I want to just remind everybody, there was the targets of Operation Chaos within the anti-war movement included Students for a Democratic Society, which was was a national student activist organization in the United States during the 60s and was one of the principal representations of the New Left, disdaining permanent leaders, hierarchical relationships, and parliamentary procedure, right? That sounds very radical, doesn't it? But the CIA infiltrated it. It was part of Operation Chaos. And that's keeping everybody, I don't know what the long-term goal of that is like making sure the movement probably didn't get too strong, probably infiltrated it with infighting or whatever they did. There was also the Women's Strike Force for Peace, which was a women's peace activist group in the United States. In 1961, at the height of the Cold War, around 50,000 women marched in 60 cities around the United States to demonstrate against the testing of nuclear weapons, right? But we talked about, they infiltrated Ramparts magazine. So when you go into this Operation Chaos and see how it worked, you see how key somebody like Gloria Steinem, let's get this women's movement person, this feminist, elevate her to a position of leadership and authority so people will listen to her. We use that to say, oh, women don't have as good as rights in the Soviet Union. Like, remember last summer we were like, oh, women are being so mistreated by the Taliban, we can't leave. Well, they were mistreated when the United States was bombing the shit out of them. I'm pretty sure drone strikes are pretty. And you see how they just take these movements and they just twist them around to make it sort of like, well, this is too confusing. It makes you also want to go, I can't follow this at all. I'm out, you know, or I can't follow, you know, but I mean, I trust Gloria Steinem, so maybe the CIA is not that bad, or whatever it is. Like, I mean, I have my mom, my sisters grew up like idolizing this woman, like just.
Yeah. And you know, there's different tactics depending on the time, depending on the group. Sometimes the tactics may be to just muddle the group in, you know, trying to make decisions where no decision can ever get made. Sometimes it can be internally members accusing each other of racism, even when there's nothing really there. It can be types of things like that. It could also be to, at times, make a group less radical, meaning, hey, you know, you were going to show up at that senator's house and like protest in his face, like, and talk them out of certain things that would actually confront authority. And other times it's to make them increasingly violent so that they can be easily arrested. So it can be the guy, there were people that had sent to infiltrate the Black Panthers and say, let's kill the cops, you know, and things like that. So it's easy to arrest them once you have plans to kill cops and things like that. So you know, it's not just one thing. It's not like, oh, if a group gets radical, that means CIA. If a group is not radical, that means CIA.
Yeah, exactly. They do all these different tactics to just make sure there's no unity, no real strength, that they can't. And we'll wrap this segment up in a second. It's one thing that Julian Assange and WikiLeaks has pointed out. And I remember talking to Susie Dawson about this because she knew Julian, or knows him, but I mean, knew him where she could have conversations. Obviously, nobody can have a conversation with him now because he's being illegally detained. But Assange would say, and because he found all these documents that were given to WikiLeaks, showing it's like sometimes it's like, oh, the janitor accidentally shredded these documents. You know, like the CIA would just do shit like that. Like, oh, the Wi-Fi keeps going down. You know, like just these little, they would just do anything to gum it up. You know, or like you say, create little infighting or make it so radical that mainstream, you know, people are going to go, they're out of their minds now. They're too violent. I don't condone that or whatever. And it's all these, they do anything to get inside. And and then that's the other thing too. The CIA operative inside the movement is going to be, it's not going to be some white guy with a crew cut, you know what I mean? That's trying to look like a hipster. It's going to be the biracial person with tattoos and a nose ring and wearing the Rage Against the Machine shirt or the Public Enemy shirt. It's going to be that person. That's who it's going to be. It's going to be the cool, hip feminist with the blue hair. It's going to be that.
Undercover, in my experience, the undercover cops at like a protest, like at Occupy,
they're obvious.
At least some of them were, I'm not saying they're all obvious, but at least some of them were ripped white dudes with crew cuts wearing like a tap out t-shirt. Like you were like, that guy is either a cop or out of his fucking mind. But then if it gets to like CIA and infiltration like that, no, they do it right. They have the right outfit on. They're not some, you know, fucking bulging steroid case.
Yeah. It'll be a woman with blue hair that doesn't shave her legs. You know what I mean? Right. Deliberately to be like, yes, it'll be that. It'll be the guy with the crazy tattoos that looks like he just came from, you know, Bonnaroo or some shit, you know, or that's what it's going to be. So this, you know, as we say on the show, everything's all the CIA's evil crap is all interconnected. It's all interconnected. So, and there's no Santa Claus, folks, if you watch this. So the Tooth Fairy, you know, like I said, she's not nice. She's a recruiter for Epstein. That's what you just learned on the show. So.
Yep.
All right, let's do government secrets. Segment number 2. Lee Camp talks about comedians getting murdered.
So today, let's go into Lenny Bruce, and we've mentioned him before on the show, but we haven't done a full segment on what happened to him. And I thought, as long as we're in the habit of sharing clips this week, I thought I'd show a little clip of his stand-up. And apparently, this is a rare hour because it was one of his final performances. But if I actually did real preparation for this show, I would have found like the perfect clip of him talking about police or religion or something. Instead, I didn't do any of that. So I'm just going to play a random 1 minute and we'll see what we get.
I would highly recommend people watch the movie Lenny, where Dustin Hoffman played Lenny Bruce. It's a really amazing thing. And why Lenny Bruce means a lot to comics like Lee and myself is you have to understand Lenny Bruce said stuff on stage that was illegal in many states and cities and got arrested for it. And
yeah, we're gonna get into that.
You know, and we stuff. We can all say stuff on stage now that's not going to get us arrested, which is thanks to guys like Lenny Bruce and Carlin. So here's this.
And I'm just going to show 1 minute. So, and he also had a lot of topical references that sometimes don't make sense these days. So who knows?
Don't go forget about it. Now I got to that court, and the bench is like, it's the longest bench in the world. It's like, and there's 3 judges, and they're way up there, and there's like the desk between you and the court. I really got shook. Yeah. So there's the Thurgood Marshall said to me, oh yeah, he said, what are you doing over here? You didn't exhaust your remedies in the state court. You know? So he's a Negro, and I think, well, I'll grab him. He'll understand my problem in the state court. I said, Your Honor, what it's like is I'm a nigger in Alabama, and I'm looking to use the toilet, see? And by the time I get the relief, it's going to be too late. See what he says to me, you're no nigger. I said, I know that's an analogy. Good night, now.
Well, I didn't mean to play the part with the N-words, but...
Well, it should be stated.
Times have changed slightly.
Well, this is relevant, though, to a certain extent, because what Lenny Bruce, and you could say maybe this was not a smart, and his thinking at the time was, and I saw a documentary about him, is he's like, if I say the N-word over and over, it won't make it so powerful. It'll just make it. That was his thinking, was like.
Yeah, say it in that way, but in bits that are actually talking about the oppression of Black people. And I'm sure he had conversations with Dick Gregory, who was trying to do the same thing, and Dick Gregory was Black. And, you know, the name of Dick Gregory's book was the N-word, the actual word. And his reasoning was, I wanted to make, white Americans have to say the name to order the book. Like, he felt like he was taking power out of the word. But anyway, those are all side points. But this does, obviously, it's a good clip to play in terms of what you can be, can't be arrested for now, and you could have been arrested for then. So I want to read some of this. This is from biography.com, and I actually had trouble finding a good article on like the persecution of Lenny Bruce. I'm sure they exist. I know there's whole books that exist on it, but there's surprisingly few recent articles on how the government essentially killed him. I think many people have just written it off as like, oh, he abused drugs and that's what killed him. But so he was Long Island. He was born in Long Island. His original name was Leonard Schneider, and he turned to entertainment after a teenage stint in the U.S. Navy during World War II. He was influenced by the free-flowing and improvisational nature of jazz, which he thought he could adapt to his stage performances, along with his own dark satirical view of once taboo topics like police, politics, religion, race, sex, and drugs. As his career progressed, no topic or person would be spared as he railed against the perceived hypocrisy of establishment figures and launched scathing criticisms of religious, social, and political leaders, leading the mainstream media to brand him a, quote, sick comic. And, religion is really one of the main things that got him heavily persecuted.
So it's not just the FBI and the police that went after him. It was the Catholic Church. The Catholic Church said, no, there's a famous story he told about, he did this whole bit calling out the hypocrisy of the Catholic Church, which I'm like, I remember being a kid watching clips of this guy. So my parents let me go to R-rated movies when I was way too young. They took me to Dachau when I was 6. So there was a lot of supervision with regard to stuff. One of the upsides of that was in the 80s, we got our first VCR and we got a membership to this video store in Chicago called Video Sonic, I believe. And man, all I did was watch old cool movies in the 70s that I wasn't too young to go to the theater. And one of them was Lenny, and I couldn't get enough of Lenny Bruce. I didn't know I wanted to even be a comic then at that age, but I couldn't get enough of this guy because I was like, wow, he was calling out, we were raised Catholic, and my mom, we stopped going to Catholic church because when my parents got divorced, they turned their back on her. It's insane.
Really?
Oh yeah. Because you can't get divorced in the Catholic Church.
Yeah.
And so I was like, oh, Catholicism is nonsense, you know, at a young age. And so I saw this interview with Lenny Bruce, and he talked about he had done this famous bit calling out the Catholic Church. And so he was going to go perform in Chicago, and there was all this like, we don't want you to perform here. And he said one of the cops showed up. It was Ash Wednesday or whatever, had the Ash cross on his forehead. A couple of the cops had that on their forehead. And that's why they came to arrest him. He's like, I'm a Catholic and I'm arresting you for this. And I was like, wow, that's at a young age. I was like, wait a minute. I thought we had freedom of speech. How is the church? How are cops being sent by the church to arrest a comedian? I was like 12. Like, what? This doesn't make any sense to me at all. And I also, as a kid in the 70s, it wasn't on Saturday nights. I'd watch Saturday Night Live, the original cast of Saturday Night Live, which was very subversive and very critical of politics and war and Nixon and Ford.
Yeah,
and,
it used to be far more subversive. Yeah.
Well, it got bought out. I mean, then when General Electric, that made, in addition to making, you know, toasters and microwaves, makes weapons of mass destruction, owns NBC, buys them up in the 90s, then Saturday Night Live becomes basically a Coke machine, you know? So it's really Lenny Bruce. And I just want to put this in context for some of our viewers or listeners who might not be, who are younger. He was the guy that like stuck it to those in powerful. And then Carlin got arrested for saying stuff, and Carlin was like, looked up to Lenny Bruce. And Dick Gregory was in that.
Yeah, Carlin's 7 dirty words ends up going to the Supreme Court as to whether, although he loses, but as to whether you could say those or play those clips on government airwaves, like FM, AM, or whatever. But yeah, so there's a great documentary, 2-part documentary on HBO right now that people can watch about Carlin. But anyway, by the mid-1950s, Bruce was performing across the country and released a series of comedy albums, but his increasing notoriety and refusal to conform resulted in his being blacklisted from many popular television shows due to fears that his provocative act would offend complacent Eisenhower-era audiences, and probably more specifically advertisers. And, you know, this part of it is interesting to me because that part has not changed. The part that if you are not conforming to kind of what's allowable in comedy, then you are not getting on those shows. You might not be arrested anymore. In fact, you're almost never going to even be told that you're saying the things that aren't allowed on those networks. But I was, you know, I was at all of the clubs in New York regularly, and they all knew I was a good comic, and I would be put, you know, in prime spots because they knew I do well, and I'm talking about political stuff. And I was never, for the most part, a few things here and there, never really told that I was going against what's allowable. But I was essentially, first of all, I never did a late night show, was never allowed on a late night show. I had one discussion back and forth with the Letterman people, but they made it clear they didn't want my material that had politics in it. And like, you know, you will be banned from all the shows, which is how you build a career.
Yeah, you get on late night TV, you have multiple appearances, then somebody, Comedy Central or Netflix or HBO or whatever, Showtime gives you a big comedy special, and then that's how you then have a huge audience, and then you have, you know, 1 million followers on some social media platform, and now you're selling out theaters. That's how it goes. And so what they've done, what we've revealed on this show is how much more sophisticated they've gotten. So like, you know, we don't do assassinations anymore, like what they did to Kennedy. You do character assassinations, or you never even let somebody like that get close to a position of power. You don't arrest Lenny Bruce. You don't arrest a comedian anymore. You throttle them. You take down their, you demonetize their YouTube channel. You know what I mean? Like I should, you and I both should have hundreds of thousands of YouTube subscribers. We should be actually making $100,000 a month, like that, like that website says. You know, we should be traveling around the country selling out theaters, but we're throttled. I mean, that's how they do it now. It's way more subtle. And they also do that thing that gets us all into self-censorship. Like the Letterman people, without saying it, told you, if you stop doing politics, we'll have you on the show. I mean, they didn't use those words, but they said, yeah, we don't like politics. So a lot of comics will go, okay, I'll come back with a 5-minute that's about my family, or, whatever, being a dad or whatever, I'll just come up with that 5 minutes, and that gets you on. So comics, I mean, I know you, when I got demonetized a year and a half ago, I talked to other YouTubers and they were like, oh God, and I heard them. I'm like, but you're self-censoring. They're like, yeah, but I need the money. I don't want to get.
There's tons of self-censoring going on right now that people don't really want to talk about.
No, I mean, you're watching, folks. Some of your favorite lefty YouTubers are self-censoring. They're deliberately not talking about certain stuff because it'll get taken. It'll get taken down, or they'll get deplatformed. So it's like, this is Lenny Bruce, and then he was a heroin addict. So that's an easy thing. Once they find out you're an addict, then they know. I mean, did they murder him? Did they force him to OD? I don't know. Probably not, but I'm sure they made heroin readily available to the guy. They're like, they find out your weakness.
Graham, I'm getting to that, and you might be wrong. Don't jump the gun.
Sorry for having a too optimistic of a view.
So he made a handful of appearances on national TV, despite being one of the biggest comedians in America. Once he had his kind of change and started doing what would be called dirtier stuff, they stopped having him. He only had a handful, but even when he was booked, they tried to censor him. Despite all of that, he continued to become huge. In 1961, he played a landmark gig in Carnegie Hall, which many historians say was the apex of his career. He was arrested on drug abuse charges in Philadelphia and obscenity charges in San Francisco in 1961, but he was acquitted in 1962. But of course, even if you are acquitted, it's just a huge, stressful, awful, sometimes expensive period of your life to fight these things. So even getting acquitted doesn't mean, oh yeah, no problem. A 1962 drug charge in Los Angeles was dropped, but in 1963, he was convicted of obscenity in Chicago after being arrested on stage. In increasing ill health due to his looming legal troubles and worsening drug addiction, Bruce decided to return to New York. And just to throw in here, when they say he was arrested for drugs, well, part of the reason, how many performers are doing drugs? I think roughly all of them, and not all of them, but close. But how many are arrested? Well, they were going after the people that they wanted to go after. So, he and Carlin at one point start getting searched and arrested for drugs because they're trying to get them for something else. They really want to stop them from performing, but if we can find drugs in their pocket, that'll solve it. So powerful forces were coalescing against him. Manhattan District Attorney Frank Hagan, working in conjunction with the church officials, including Archbishop Francis Cardinal Spellman, that's weird, he has like a Jewish last name, began their own investigation of Bruce. When he was booked at the popular Greenwich Village nightclub Cafe A Go-Go in 1964, undercover detectives recorded 2 of his shows, which they presented to a grand jury. Then in April, Bruce was arrested, charged with violating New York Penal Code 1140, barring obscene material that could aid in the corruption of morals of youth and others, and faced a maximum punishment of 3 years in prison. The club's owner, and this is key, the club's owner was also arrested for allowing Bruce to perform the material. Now, that's how you go after someone's income, is you make the clubs afraid to even book him because they could get arrested. They could lose their liquor license. So all of a sudden, it's not just that he has to worry about getting arrested. The clubs won't even fucking let him on their stage.
Yeah, and that's so many ways how to censor him, like you say. And then if you're tied up in a long legal battle, you're not on the road. You can't go tour as a comedian. You know what I mean? Like when you're and all these, even like you say, the one he was acquitted. So they use all these tactics to make him, the networks aren't going to hire him. The clubs are afraid to hire him. That they go after him. And that's how the modern version of that is all the stuff you and I have had to deal with.
Yeah. Yeah. It's the digital version of that. Yeah.
Yeah.
When the trial, let's see. So during his trial, his team called a bunch of witnesses, including literary critics and psychologists, aimed at proving that while Bruce's material may have been offensive, It was not sexually provocative enough to warrant a conviction under the wording of the New York state statutes. You see, back then, and this is the change, back then you can't just argue it as a freedom of speech. You had to like prove the speech wasn't sexually provocative.
Right.
It took 3 months for the 3-judge panel to issue a verdict. In 1964, Bruce, who had already fired his attorneys, was convicted, as was club owner Howard Solomon. Solomon's sentence was later overturned. Bruce launched into an hour-long defense at his sentencing, but was sentenced to 4 months in a workhouse. He remained out on bail pending an appeal, but was virtually unemployable and essentially bankrupt. What few dates he did book could barely cover his drug habit or his legal bills, which continued to pile up as he became embittered, and obviously his stage performances, as we just saw in that clip, became almost exclusively about his legal troubles, which, you know, there's something noble to be talked about there, but it's certainly not.
There's one of his last shows. He literally is just reading court transcripts.
Right. Not the best entertainment. On August 3rd, 1966, Bruce was found dead of a morphine overdose at his LA home, aged 40 years old. In 1973, the U.S. Supreme Court reversed years of earlier precedent. So this is 7 years after his death. Years of earlier precedents in the landmark case Miller versus California, which broadened First Amendment protection for material like Bruce's, based on an argument of the material's underlying literary, artistic, and social value. And then the final update in 2003, Bruce's fellow comics came to his defense again as Robin Williams, Penn and Teller, and others joined free speech advocates in a petition to New York Governor Pataki. That December, 37 years after his death, Bruce received a posthumous pardon for his 1964 conviction. But obviously, that doesn't bring him back to life. And this is the quote. I said, you might be wrong, Graham. I didn't know about this quote before. I have been saying in many interviews when I talk about censorship, I talk about censorship of comedians. I mentioned Lenny Bruce as being essentially driven to his death by police that were continually arresting him for his speech. And but even though I was saying that, and I believe that, I didn't know about this quote. Vincent Cuccia, one of the New York DAs who prosecuted Bruce's last obscenity case, said, quote, "We drove him into poverty and bankruptcy and then murdered him. We all knew what we were doing. We used the law to kill him."
Wow. Cue an American patriotic song. That's what I always want to do whenever we read one of those things. Just like, yeah, they murdered him. That was a deliberate tactic. Wow. That's what you do. And that's part. And then look, again, this is something that WikiLeaks has talked about, that I've talked to Susie Dawson about. They go after whistleblowers or truth tellers or people that challenge the powerful to isolate them and make it hard for them to make a living and make them feel like everyone's out to get them. And man, if you got a drug habit or an alcohol problem, they're going to push you into that corner. And that's exactly what they did.
And then the other thing was, for those who were, closeted, they'd often either closeted or having affairs. They'd threatened to reveal that. With MLK, they recommended he kill himself, or they were going to reveal his affairs. I mean, they know that this happens, and essentially the exact same thing was done to Jim Morrison. Just arrested for a stage performance, sentenced to time in prison, endless court cases, appeals, being trashed in the media, and then he ODs. But
and it's anyone that's a threat. They know anyone that unifies people, that challenges their power. I mean, it's preposterous to me. And this is why America is such bullshit. Separation of church and state. Really, the Catholic Archdiocese was informing, the New York Police Department and district attorneys on what, come on. Like, if that is not the most egregious violation of the rules America claims to hold so sacred. And they did this to a comedian. They're so
Yeah.
threatened by comics because they know that we can make people laugh and change their minds. You get somebody to laugh and go, wow, man, I hadn't thought of it that way. They go, oh, you're kind of right. They're more, that's why we're such a threat. I mean, what
and that along with, I mean, it's a little bit changed now with YouTube and everything, but especially pre-digital age, stand up and some music, but a lot of music, you know, most people don't hear the lyrics, but some music and stand up were the only places where celebrities got on stage, had millions of people listen to their words, and those celebrities would push them to think outside of the capitalist US empire talking points. You know, there's not a lot of things like that. It's like people don't go to really, other than politicians, people don't go to hear people speak really. Very little of that. There's very little spoken word going on anymore. People don't listen to the guy standing on the soapbox at the street corner anymore. And so it's like comedians and musicians. But, you know, if the stuff is couched in music enough that people don't actually hear what's being said, then it's not that threatening. But
yeah. And a comic, you know, again, because we've talked about they've infiltrated every other form of media. They control Hollywood, they control the TV,
right.
They control all of that stuff. So a comic standing on stage, you know, throwing fastballs of truth, that they can't, that's a threat. They can't control that. So they have to rein it in. They have to, you know,
Yeah.
it's or manipulate it to their advantage, you know? So it's, again, going back to Gloria Steinem, she was giving speeches and at protest movements, and everyone was listening to her, and she was getting a lot of interviews. So they had, of course, they made sure she was CIA. They got a CIA person. I mean, I'd be curious to know how many big name comics out there have got some sort of CIA, something, you know, that the CIA is the CIA, their agent. I mean, did someone say, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah. Although you might not even need that if they're willing to do what corporate America wants of them, which, you know, it's like it became clear to me at a point that either I keep speaking about the topics that I was speaking about, or I back off those, get better known as a less political comedian, and achieve more on late night and, you know, TV and everything. And I think most comedians will take that offer. So
yeah, I think you're right.
It's not like you need to really put them on the CIA payroll.
I think I'm overthinking stand-up comics. Most of them are just lazy, who are just like, here's a bunch of money, and you can go buy as many, you know, drugs and booze as you want, and they'll go, okay, like that's most 80 comics are lazy and they don't want to work, and they just, if you can tell them just do this and you'll sell theaters out and get a bunch of money, they'll go, yeah, you got it, man.
Yeah, most of them.
Yeah, you don't need some CIA operative writing their jokes. Yeah. They're easily manipulated. So the ones that aren't, the handful of comics that aren't easily manipulated, those are the problems. Because even look how easy some big name comics are in terms of being manipulated on YouTube. They'll go chase big clicks, and they'll just kind of steer them. Well, if you go down this road, you'll get a bunch of clicks. Oh, yeah. Hey, look at that. They were throttled at this number for a long time, and now boom, they passed this big other number. Oh, that's weird. Once they went that direction. Interesting.
Yeah. And so, I also, with some of them, I also wonder if it's as simple. They can get into very specific analytics, and it could be as simple as like, oh, every time you mention capitalism, we see a drop off of 10%, whereas every time you mention A, B, and C, we see an increase. So let's just never say the word capitalism anymore. Let's say these words over here. Yeah. Like it can be simple analytics for some of them.
Sure. Anytime Yemen or Iraq or Syria was in a title of a, this is before my whole platform was demonetized, but anytime any of those war countries, Middle Eastern war countries, were in the title, that specific video would get demonetized, usually while it was uploading.
Yeah, I know. I love that. Before it's like you haven't even, the video's not even up yet. They're like demonetized.
Demonetized. Like that's what opened the eyes up for my old editor, Sammy. She was just like, you know, worked in podcasting and comedy in LA. And she started, I go, you're going to pay it. And she was sending me screen caps. Like, they demonetized this. It's not even uploaded yet. I said, yes. Welcome to the
I know.
political vigilante.
I know. I love the people that think like we're exaggerating or something, and then they see behind the curtain, like either they do a little work for us, or they just they help us with something. Like there was a social media person at RT where Redacted Tonight was, and she was awesome. She was just like knew her shit. She knew Facebook analytics inside and out, and she was cool, and she was helping me, promote some of my videos or something. And she's like, I've never seen this before. Like they have forbid your name as a demographic. It used to be you could like, hey, I'd like to show this video to people who like Lee Camp on Facebook. And she's like, they don't ban any other. She's like, I could put in any name of a moderate celebrity in here. It wouldn't say, no, you can't do that. It was just like me and, maybe Chris Hedges or something. It was like a tiny note. She's like, I've never seen this before. And this woman does nothing but study Facebook. And people don't realize it's real until they see it.
Until they see that. Then they're like, they got it. Because and again, when we say this, some of our friends who aren't in this world think, oh, those guys are a little nuts. They're somebody's got a high opinion of themselves. And it's like, I've been demonetized. And then I was listed in 24 documents that Susie Dawson found. You were listed in these documents. And I tell friends of mine that, and they're like, really? I go,
something node.
Yeah. I go, we were listed in documents.
Yeah.
Like
that was like, it was basically, it was basically documents mapping out quote unquote influencers that were connected to like WikiLeaks and Assange, basically people that furthered those stories, like, and we're talked about in these things. Yeah.
Yeah. It's crazy. Well, that's our show, folks. We have a very strict schedule today, so we don't have time for the bonus Patreon. However, next week we don't have time. I'm traveling, so we don't have time to do a real episode. So next week we're going to find a time and just do one of the Patreon bonuses. So
we'll do a bonus episode next week. Also, again, we're coming to London and Berlin. Berlin tickets aren't up yet, but London is. You can get those at Graham's website or at my website. So leecamp.net, which you see on the screen, is my locals page, but leecamp.com has my schedule with tickets. So if people want to grab a ticket there. And the only other thing for me is that my new show with Mint Press just launched, and everybody can watch it. I know it's on YouTube. That's not up to me, but it's at youtube.com/behind the headlines, and you can see the first 5 episodes there. So.
That's awesome, guys. October 12th, we're in London. We'll be in Berlin October 5th. That date hasn't been released yet, but also I have a bunch of tour dates leading up to recording of my special. So this is now on my website. October 18th, I'm in New York City. October 20th, I'm in Madison, Wisconsin. October 22nd, I am in Cincinnati. And October 26th, I'm in Chicago taping my comedy special. Detroit will be added, as will Berlin. So please go to GrahamElwood.com, get a ticket, come out to the shows. You're not alone. You get to laugh. There's lefty comedy, and you're. I know we all feel very isolated. Like we were talking about how the powers that be like to keep us isolated. When you come to a live comedy show or live government secrets, you're going to be in a room full of people that like agree with you. You're not alone. And that's why I say come to the comedy shows, because we all need to laugh. There's really tough stuff going on and they want to throttle us. And so when you buy a ticket to a comedy show, you're telling them, suck it. We're not losing.
Yeah.
So hope to see you all in London or any of these other tour dates. But that's
Government Secrets episode 95 with Lee Camp and Graham Elwood, who the government hopes ODs on heroin.
I'm gonna stay off the heroin for now. Dude, if they ever taint my Scotch whiskey, then I'm fucked.
So I always tell my audience, I'm completely sober and it's very healthy. So if you hear that I OD'd in a hotel room, the CIA.
Wheatgrass, dude, they're gonna OD you on wheatgrass.
Just a smoothie explosion. Graham's blender attacked his face.
Like smoothie blender blades shot through Graham Elwood 7 times in the back of the head.
It's possible. So they're going to do a recall on this blender now because it killed Graham Elwood. And smoothies are dangerous. So go to McDonald's. All right, my friend. Good talking to you.
All right, man. Talk to you later.
Goodbye, everybody. First, thank you for everybody watching. I know there's a tip over on, let's see, we've got Abdul Jafari, Shave Your Knuckles for Justice. Thank you for supporting us at rockfin.com/Graham Elwood. First time catching you live, but I love the show. Awesome. Yes. So we're going to be doing this now Thursdays at 11 a.m. Pacific, 2 o'clock Eastern. Of course, next Thursday we can't because I'm traveling. But consistently we will be doing this. And please, man, if you're in London, come see us live. And we will be in Berlin. Like it's really cool. Thank you. Happy Thursday. What was the interview? When was that interview done? Was it part of Operation Chaos? That's a great question on the Gloria Steinem interview. So anyway, the cholera got Graham. The cholera. Hello. Howdy, McDonald's. That's where my dad likes to get coffee. Drive-through only. Seriously, right on. All right. Thank you. My knuckles are always shaved. Right on. Thank you guys so much. The Magic Blender. Hello. Show some love. Backyard Politics and Holly Horn. Check out Backyard Politics Show. Infiltrate, assimilate, educate, dissipate, repeat elsewhere. Absolutely. Just remember the possession of more than 6 dildos is prohibited in Texas. That's why I always travel to Texas. I only bring 5. Usually I travel with 7 or 8, but I only bring 5 to Texas. The live shows are fantastic. Thank you. I'm glad you guys loved everything. Great. This is great. No Italy. No, sorry, no Italy. London. We will be in London, Berlin. I'm poor beyond belief. You would have to come to my messy living room in Edmonton, Canada for me to see you live. You got it. We're coming to Dave's living room in Edmonton, Canada, folks, soon. But I will be in New York City. I will be in New York City October 18th at the Broadway Comedy Club. So come see me in New York City. And I'm probably thinking next spring we'll be able to do like a tour of government secrets. That's my hope. In Russia, the sign for McDonald's has changed and nothing has changed except for lemonade. I brought breakfast at the new McDonald's. It's the same, but with Russian lemonade. I got in a fight with the door greeter at Walmart again. Don't fight the door greeter. Come on. They're just doing their jobs. All right, everybody. We had 144 likes. Thank you so much. That's our show. Not sure if I'm going live tomorrow. I don't think I'll be able to, but we'll be again live, of course, Monday for the Crypto Lounge. We've been doing it 6 o'clock on Mondays. Pacific, 6 o'clock Pacific. And what we've been doing on these last Mondays for the last month or so is we do the beginning part of the show for everybody on YouTube and Facebook. And then the second half of the show, we do it just on Rockfin. I'm just trying to get more people to sign up on Rockfin because that's like one of my main revenue streams for this. And since the demonetization, guys, is sucks. It sucks. It's not fun, but come out to a live show, everybody. Thank you for watching, everybody. Thank you to Lee Camp. Thank you to Holly Horn and Backyard Politics, our moderators. Thank you to all of you for signing up on Rockfin, everybody watching on Facebook and the YouTube. We really appreciate it. And sign up to Patreon Patreon.com/government secrets. And if you sign up today, you still get the backlog. You can look at all of the bonus segments we've done. We've done 12 of them basically. So for $5 a month, you can sign up for Government Secrets. You get a sticker after 3 months, and you get all of the back segments. And we'll do one next week. So thank you all. Go to Rockfin, sign up for everything. We will see you all later. Have a wonderful weekend. We will see you Monday, 6 o'clock Pacific, and then the weekend after that, I'm running around enjoying stuff. My birthday, I know, was 2 weeks ago, but I'm getting together with all my buddies. So we appreciate everybody, Matt S., everybody in the chat, and everything else. All right. Have a great day, everybody. We'll see you soon. Thanks for watching. Boom. Boom. Wait.